founder of 4 startups. I was very lucky with the first 3. The first one was, I started with $500 of myself, and each of my 2 partners put in $500. So we had $1,500. We started it in my second year of business school at the Stanford of the East Coast in Boston.
You're very kind.
We never raised venture capital. It started as a company called Dial-A-Fish. It was when you could order groceries from home. It was insane. It was before the internet and everything. We eventually sold it for, we had to change direction because that was not going to work, into a computer telephony tool. We sold it for $13 million a few years later, which was tiny for Silicon Valley standards, but a fair New England return on the $1,500 investment. The second company was Direct Hit, which was an internet search engine. Nobody ever heard of Direct Hit, but we were providing search results to Microsoft, AOL, Lycos. We're kind of a behind-the-scenes provider. And it was the right time. We grew to a market value of $500 million 500 days after we launched it, and we sold it in January of 2000. And then the third company was Xfire, which is an instant messenger for PC video gamers. It spread virally. We got to about 3 million users 2 years after launching, and we sold it for $100 million to MTV, and now there's 15 million users using it. And I'm now working on my 4th one, which I could end up being, I want to be 4-0, but I could be 3-1 because we haven't sort of found the formula for success on Ruba. Ruba is a travel site, so that's sort of my background.
And when did you graduate from Harvard?
Oh, a long time ago.
We have to get into numbers.
Well, well, the reason why is it's sort of interesting to know the timing of your first venture, right? Because that was, you said, prior to the internet.
Yes.
But so you were actually a leader in that. Others came after you, also didn't do very well, right?
So I would.
You may have been the biggest winner in that whole space of ordering food from home.
If we'd started a different time.
Well, you sold it for $13 million.
Yeah.
Most of the other companies I know lost money, right?
So win by default. Sure. So I decided I was going to stop aging at age 31. So I graduated Harvard from 1991, so I must have graduated around age 11. So
11.
You can figure out from.
Good. All right, thank you. Nazila.
So I'm Nazila Alasti, and I started life as an engineer. I'm Iranian originally, and in my country, if you're a good student, you either become a doctor or an engineer. So that was the choice, and I was scared of blood, so off I went into engineering school. But it was actually a really great background, I thought, for Silicon Valley. I didn't know I would end up here, but I did. And I was thankful for my parents for having pushed me into engineering. Fast forward 5 years of working a technology company, Advanced Micro Devices. I became a project designer, project lead, went to a business school, and learned that people can actually make money selling pencils, and that it doesn't have to be semiconductors. That was my big learning from business school. Entrepreneurial activities at the time were not as hot as they are now.
When did you graduate?
I graduated in 88.
88?
So I also stopped aging at 30, a few years earlier than you. Yeah. And I have to say that my experience at business school was really eye-opening, broadening, but I wouldn't say that I was focused on necessarily becoming an entrepreneur. It seemed very risky at the time. However, after I got out and experienced the venture capital world for a couple of years, and then went on to work at Apple, which I consider really my formative years at Apple, and worked on a big failure of a project called Newton, which was the original handheld device. I came to understand that I really needed more freedom in my life, and that the corporate structure wasn't providing that. And I was stupid enough or naive enough to say that I could do things on my own. So I started a long line of all sorts of startups, failures as well as successes, and ended up now running Juners, which is my first from PowerPoint to funding to product startup. where I am CEO, founder, and growing that business. So that's a little bit about me.
Zilla's also the mother of 2 daughters,
Yes, I am.
and someone who is passionate about trying to help those of you who are thinking about entrepreneurship learn more about it. So that's why she's here today.
Yeah, let me add to that, Chuck.
sure.
Thank you for bringing it up. I also want to talk to the women in the group, if you're interested afterwards, about why I believe entrepreneurship is actually a very valid choice and compatible with being a mother. So anyone who's interested in discussing that, I'm open to doing that. The world will tell you, no, it's 24/7, et cetera. Unless you burn the midnight oil, you won't be successful. I happen to have a different story. So if anyone is interested, I'm happy to share that.
Great, thank you. So we've heard from 2 people who actually had technical backgrounds. Will, give us your background and what you're doing now.
Thanks, Chuck. So I graduated in 1999 from Kellogg, and I've been in the Valley since then. I've done a combination of both startups and venture capital activity. So currently I'm the CEO of a Sequoia and Hummer Winblad funded company called Widgetbox. And I joined Widgetbox 2 years ago, and before that I was the managing director at Hummer Winblad and spent 6 years in the venture capital business. So since I got out of business school, I've had kind of the opportunity to see both entrepreneurs in action as a venture backer and thinking through business models and deciding who to finance and who not to finance. And then also having decided that to become an entrepreneur myself. And it's only recently I even consider myself one, quite honestly. But the last couple of years of running a small startup that's not profitable makes you one, I think. It's been a very interesting time to run a company. So no, I'm definitely excited to be here today and kind of share my thoughts about what business school taught me, what it didn't teach me about how to lead a company, bring products to market, sell, et cetera. And Chuck's right, like in terms of backgrounds, I went to Harvard, studied East Asian Studies and Finance, and started my career actually in Asia. So I worked in Hong Kong and Singapore, spoke Mandarin Chinese, and thought I was going to be part of the Asian miracle. And so I've done. I'm not coming from an engineering background, in other words, and so part of one of the questions today I think is how do MBAs and finance people fit into a culture that's really driven by engineers as opposed to business types, and kind of the MBA being a joke as opposed to something good. I'm happy to be here and look forward to a good discussion.
Now, one of the things, Will, if I'm correct in reading this and listening to you, you joined Widgetbox after it had actually been founded.
That's correct. So there were 3 technical founders. They'd actually raised $10 million before I got there.
Some from you.
Some from me. I was the seed financer, and then Sequoia did the A round, and then Brent Jones and Tommy Vardell at Northgate did the B round. And at that point, they were looking for a CEO, and they did a 9-month search. And the last guy that we made the offer to, I told myself at the dinner, if this guy doesn't take the job, I'm doing it. He didn't take the job. So, yeah.
So some different paths here. I mean, starting their own company, going out and trying to find the idea, put the team together, versus joining a startup after it's had the initial founders. The way we want to start this is to